Performance pay. Hattie starts off by saying it's intuitively obvious that if teachers are offered this would impact on student achievement. But then he says he can't find any model that shows that it makes a difference to student learning. So then he suggests a subtle difference, to focus on expertise rather than performance. He doesn't really define expertise that well. A little bit later on he does in different papers. I'll show you that. But then his caveat is provided that they can demonstrate their additional expertise actually enhances student progress. So we're back to performance. So this is typical Hattie circular reasoning ambiguity. It's important to know that his visible learning model does lend itself to measuring teacher performance because of this 0.4 equals 1 year's growth notion. He said some dangerous things. Teachers who only attain up to 0.4 are below average. And regarding students who do not achieve at least 0.4 are going backwards. Hattie did promote teacher performance pay in New Zealand and was thwarted by a couple of New Zealand education unions. Terhart wrote a little bit about that. He says part of the criticism on Hattie condemns his close links to the New Zealand government and is suspicious of his own economic interests in the spread of his assessment and training program, ASTL. Similarly, he's accused of advertising elements of performance-related pay of teachers, and he's been criticised for the use of ASTL as the administrative tool for scaling teacher performance. I remember John O'Neill showed Hattie's methods. O'Neill calls Hattie a policy entrepreneur. He says his first strategy is to portray the public sector as ineffective, sloppy, risk-averse, innovation-resistant, and so on. So that's what he's doing with the politics of distraction. And then what Hattie does is position himself to benefit from any discourse. And that's what Hattie does in the next paper with Pearson called The Politics of Collaborative Expertise, where he once again rolls out ASTL, advertises all of its benefits in the paper. Now, in terms of defining expertise, Hattie tries to do a little bit of that in Chapter 11 of Visible Learning. He uses research that he was commissioned, this National Board of Certified Teachers. He comes up with a whole range of qualities. What we might do is just focus on passion. He lists effect sizes. It's important to note that these effect sizes aren't based on student achievement, but rather observation and actually telephone interview. The study that Hattie based that graph on was with him and a few colleagues from 2000. They were commissioned by the National Board to look at the difference between certified and non-certified teachers. There were 65 teachers in all. The background is the board collects over $600 million in fees from teachers to gain certification. So a huge conflict of interest for Hattie to show that the certification works. It's interesting to notice that in that paper, he argues against using standardised achievement because he says such a comparison ignores the powerful influences of socio-economic status and other things. He continues in that vein with his wife Janet Clinton in identifying accomplished teachers. He rejects using student test scores. He says we do not support this approach, and his rationale is that student test scores depend on multiple factors which are out of the control of the teacher. Yet that contradicts 4 years later his focus on visible learning, which is totally on student achievement. And then even in this paper, he totally blames the teacher for a student not progressing a year. He said, you had him for a year and you failed. Let's have a look at passion. In the paper, they define passion as high respect for students and much passion about teaching and learning, so a bit circular. They say that the certified teachers were observed and then judged on a scale, and then somehow or other that was converted into an effect size. But the non-certified teachers, it looks as though they were interviewed by telephone. This is the statement from the paper, that 40 of them were, although it was an extensive telephone interview, I'm not sure how that could judge passion, but somehow or other they got an effect size from passion. So then we see this sort of stuff looking at teacher expertise in these fields, and a certified teacher or an expert teacher somehow or other significantly outperforms a non-certified teacher or a non-expert in passion in other areas. One peer-reviewed, Podersky, says that those standards are nebulous. And then contrasting that with teacher training, where Hattie uses the same sort of research, National Board certified teachers who do use standardised achievement. He uses this research to show that teacher training is a disaster, but not that his certification is a disaster. Pazzi Selberg then ends with some important words.